Counselor Accents Podcast. Two school counselors who love their jobs. Oh, and they happen to have Southern accents too. Bless their hearts.
I'm Laura Rankhorn.
And I am Kim Crumley, and together we are Counselor Accents, two school counselors who are in the trenches with you.
We know what you're going through because we're living it every single day.
We always do that. I don't know if that's picking up that sound, but
I usually edit it out, so people may not know that we always make that sound, but we do.
Okay, well, just leave it in there. Just leave it in there. Okay. We are at week
300.
300. It feels like 300.
I say that though. We're back in the same school system. The heaviness of the day makes it seem like week 300, but the joy that we're having just
ekes from us. It just ekes from us, and it is that has helped. It's been well, until you keep me straight. Like, did you get this done? Or you're supposed to have this done? And I'm like, okay. So that helps because I didn't do anything last year. I didn't know what I was doing.
Well, and I'm going to credit our supervisor too. I did send her a message today. I know it's not this way for everybody, and I am so sorry if it's not. But I sent her a message and I just said, you help us stay on track so well that we're able to do our jobs confidently. And I'm just so grateful for her.
Oh, we are. And bless her heart, she has to put up with us. But she does an amazing job and lets us do all the things we want to do. But she does like to keep everybody in their places. So we have these little name cards, and I get tickled because we did end up still sitting together.
She knows
we're like
that
that you give assigned seats to, and then they wiggle back together. And so I did notice by the end of the day, you had scooched yourself like they're not going to notice you. Come on.
Well, here's the thing. We had a district meeting. And so we walked in to find our places, and we were at separate tables. But after lunch, you're the one that you said, sit back here with me. Nobody will notice. So it was you, because I'm a follower, but you led me back there.
That's right. Get it. Are you just going to jump off? My mom would say, if I jump off the building, would you jump off the building?
Probably, if you told me to. And if you said, I'm going to do it too, I probably would.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm very appreciative of that.
If you said, it's going to be fun, let's do this.
So I'm excited about Holly coming on today. This has been on our hearts, especially with school starting the year. Our thing has been to when we see behaviors, what is that behavior saying, or what are we seeing? And we're helping educators, the Maslow before Bloom. We're really, really, I think more than ever, it's important. Because as we see more and more issues arising. And so we're really hoping that educators are and we're part of that, of helping them be cognizant of what students might be going through and experiencing at home. And so that's kind of what led us to Holly. So I'm looking forward to hearing her story and how it's going to help us as educators.
Kim, you said it best whenever you just said before we got started that you felt like we had a celebrity with us, and you are absolutely right. We have tracked Holly down until she agreed to be on our podcast, and we are so grateful for it.
Thank you.
So, Holly, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
I'm Holly Wilcox. I'm from St. Cloud, Minnesota. Born and raised in Minnesota. Right now, I'm a mental health practitioner, which I've been doing for 3 months. Absolutely love it. Before that, I was involved in visitation supervision and parenting skills for going on 10 years. So very closely related with CPS and child advocacy, all of that stuff. No kids, but fur babies. 2, especially one that's super, super loud.
And they can be part of the family. They're like family.
They very much are. Yes. Yeah.
So, Kim, you are actually the one who found Holly, and you sent the clip to me. So why don't you tell a little bit about that story?
Well, I think it was actually my mom shared it with me, because I was talking to my mom about all the ACEs and explaining that to her. And we were doing some trainings for our teachers on some of that. And She saw your story and shared it with me, and then I just kind of I'm the one that stalked you first, so I'm the first stalker. Recently, we talked. Laura and I did a conversation on our podcast just about the importance of teachers understanding that some of our children are living out their ACEs as we in their traumas as we are interacting with them every day, and to always be mindful of that. And so we've been doing some educator training on that, and we're kind of surprised at the number of people who really don't understand ACEs and how that affects your adult life. So I would really like for you to tell your story. We're just going to turn it over to you, and can't wait. So
Sure.
yeah.
Okay. So for one, I should start with the reason I picked this date. Today is actually my 43rd birthday. And
Hey.
thank you. And I wanted to share this and make it monumental because being young and growing up the way I did, I definitely didn't think I'd make it to 43.
Wow.
You know, like my childhood was very tumultuous, very crazy. Any kind of child abuse you can think of, been it, seen it, done it, know about it, lived it, got the t-shirt, don't want to do it again type of thing.
Yeah.
And as far as my story, like at 4, I was trying to drown myself. At
Wow.
6, I was holding a knife to my throat as I'm talking to my friend saying, "What do you mean your dad doesn't touch you like that?" At 10, I'm telling my mom, "You need to stay up with me or I'm going to kill myself and I'm going to OD." And finally, at 16, I ended up in the mental hospital for the first time. But it was all these things, and I haven't been in there since then. So thank goodness and thank God.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a struggle. It's very much a struggle. We lived very poor, very, very poor. We ate out of garbage cans to survive. My dad, who was an alcoholic and drug addict, he would tell the people at the store that he was getting slop for his pigs. And actually, he was bringing it home to feed us. Because he would take the money and go and buy drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
He was extremely abusive in every sense of the word, including sexual. And that started, I don't remember when it started, but from what my mom says, she caught us in a very peculiar predicament when I was 4 months old. And that continued until I was 8. At 8, my parents divorced and moved out. But my mom, this is the thing, like, God rest her soul, she never said anything bad about him. It was never. She's like, he's your dad. You're going to decide what you're going to decide about him. You're going to feel how you feel about him. I'm just here to love you regardless. And that's how she kept it all her life up to her dying day, was that, yes, he's done these things. And yes, I hear you. And yes, I want to believe you. But this is also the man that I loved. And so you have a completely different spin when you're looking at it that way too, because yes, you want to be there for your child, but you're thinking, how could this person that I love do these terrible things, and not just to me, but now to our own children? And it took a long time I did not know until I was 25 that everything that I thought was true was true. Reason being, he would gaslight me. I sent him to jail, I don't know how many times, by numerous things. And I remember when he got out once when I was 10, he calls me and he says, "You put daddy in jail, right?" And I said, "Yeah, well, daddy shouldn't be touching me." And he said, "Once you get your mind straight, you'll see that it wasn't me. It wasn't me." And and we grew up in like a very strict religious type of thing as well. And he's like, "This is what they're putting in your head. They're the reason that your mom left me. It's all of their fault, and all of that stuff didn't really happen. You'll see once you get your mind straight." Well, as I got older, my thought was, okay, if he's saying he didn't do it, then who did it? Because you're still saying someone did it, and you might know who did it, but you're not confessing that it's you, right? So who is it if it's not you?
Mm.
but yet I can remember laying there, like, so where we lived was a very small old farmhouse, many electrical fires, many times. It was not the cream of the crop when it came to farmhouses. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah.
And so we had to share one room, and there's 4 of us. And my sister and I shared a bed, and she would, like, I remember when he would get on top of me looking at her and making sure that she was sleeping, because I did not want her to have to see that stuff.
Yeah.
And luckily, though, or unluckily for her, at 25, she finally told me, she said, all those things that you've been telling us is true. I remember. She said, I woke up and I remember seeing it happening. And I remember, all those other things that you said happened. And and yet it was like, I was upset, but it was justification of the fact that I am not the crazy one,
Yeah.
because that's exactly, like, all my teenage years, everything. That is exactly how he made me feel. I am your father. And, I didn't do those things to you. It was, it was this, that, or the other thing, or this is what people put in your head, or, all these things. Just so finally at 25 to have that justification that you are not crazy, someone knows and someone believes you, and someone is there to love you regardless. And it's interesting now because where we're at, she's actually kind of dealing with some of her own stuff from our childhood, which I've done a lot of therapy and a lot of just self reflecting, I've been through DBT, I've been through any training that I can take, even like when I was in high school and stuff, anything about mental health, I was reading it. I was like, I want to know why this happens. Why is it the way it is? Like all these things. And now she's seeing that, and she's kind of living with that whole, like, I'm so sorry, I was a terrible sister. And that's hard because she's not a terrible sister. If it wasn't for her, I would probably still be thinking that I'm the crazy one, to be honest.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of a lot, I guess. It's not all dark and dank and terrible, got a lot of help. Went through a lot of stuff. Like, he would come back into our life, and my mom will let him back in because, he's our dad, and she wanted to think that things were different. Things were not different. But finally, when I was 18, I knew that I had beat the dragon. I knew. And the reason was because he and his girlfriend had showed up at my mom's house one night, and they had been drinking. And I had gotten into a physical altercation with another male just days before this. I had a black eye from this male. And that was because I was trying to protect my roommate. It was her boyfriend. He was beating her. I stepped in. He went after me instead. So my dad sees the black eye and he says, well, who'd you get that from? And I said, well, it was just some guy I got in a fight with. It's not a big deal. You should see the other guy. And he's like, well, what do you mean guy? Like, no guy should be hitting on you. And I was like, do not start to be a dad now. Do not.
Right.
Because no. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm 18. You've had all this time. You weren't there. Stop.
Yeah.
As the night progresses, we're talking, and my dad would interrupt a lot. He was very much interrupting, and like he believed that he needed to be heard, he needed to be seen, he needed to be like, he was the life of the party, for many people. So I was trying to have a conversation with his girlfriend and my mom, and he kept interrupting, and I said, Dad, stop. Let her talk. And he said, yeah, okay, whatever. We keep having this conversation. He keeps interrupting. He's getting louder. He's getting more belligerent, whatever. So I was frustrated. And this seems so minimal now, but to know that this is where I gained my strength. I had this deck of cards I was playing with, like fidgets, kind of. I took that deck of cards and I threw it at him. And I said, I told you to shut up and let her talk. He stood up and he clenched his fists like he was going to hit me. And I said, "You hit me, and I will hit you." And he looked at my mom, he looked at his girlfriend, he looked at me, and he sat back down. That's when I knew that I had tamed that beast. My family and I are extremely close. My mom was a super loving mom. Unfortunately, she passed almost 3 years ago. Just we could, all four of us kids could have been in jail or on drugs or, not have our kids or whatever else. Not a single one of us ended up that way. All of us went to college. All of us have good, stable jobs. Some of us have significant others. My brother's been married for like 20 something years and has my two wonderful nephews. My sister, she has a daughter who I absolutely adore, who is 9, and just as feisty as her aunties, I might add. So we're good with that, and I know it's because of God. I know it's because of my mom getting us out of there when she did. I know it's because just of all that stuff, but this is the sad part is I remember being 20 something. And so both sides of my family, my mom grew up with an alcoholic, abusive father as well. My dad, as far as I know, his father stopped drinking, but I don't know when. But he just quit cold turkey, realizing what was happening in the family and what he was doing to them. He ended up in the hospital. So he just quit. I don't know how old my dad was by this time or whatever was done by that time. Anything like that. But I remember going to my cousin's house, and so my cousin was still married to an alcoholic. And he's drinking, he's getting belligerent, he's yelling, he's screaming, he's getting in my cousin's face. My cousin is my age. This guy that she's married to is at least 15 years older, if not more. Like, he's looked at as an older adult. And so I don't know, again, this is going to age me, but I already said my age. Back in my day, we respected our elders. Like, they knew what they were talking about, and it was yes and no and okay and, whatever. And they're going back and forth. And so the older cousin starts pushing my younger cousin. And the cousin that I was there with, she starts crying because it's just too much. It's too traumatic for her. She can't handle this. And I'm just watching. And her mom looked at me and said, "Takes you back, doesn't it?" And I was like, yeah. And that was the realization that, wow, you all knew.
Wow.
And you did nothing.
Hmm.
Nothing. Yes, you had your own demons to conquer. You had your own struggles, whatever. But I was a kid.
Yeah.
A kid who hated myself until I was 30 something because I thought that I didn't protect my siblings enough.
Wow.
Or I thought that I let this stuff happen because maybe somewhere in some other lifetime or life form, I was a bad person. And so I deserved it. And it's taken a long time to get where I am, where I understand I was a kid and it's not my fault.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you guys deal with children, and seeing where they are now and like how things have changed, I think is good, but it's not enough. You're still having the kids that are eating out of the garbage. You're still having the kids that are getting beat at home. You're still having the kids that won't dare talk to you and tell you that things are happening because they know that if nothing happens and they go home and their parent finds out, they're going to get it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So back in my day, if I would say something, for one, they would ask you in front of the perpetrator and say, "Well, you said this. Is this true?" Your perpetrator is standing right there. You're a kid. You know that this is the person that is going to beat you the minute you get home.
Yeah.
You know that. If you end up going home. And if you don't go home with them, the minute you do get home, because he's going to do something to make sure you come home, it's on. It's done. It's over. Or like when they wanted me to testify against him in court. And they said, "Well, you might have to go up on the witness stand and you might have to face him." Because they didn't have, I don't know why they didn't do the television stuff that they do sometimes now. And I was like, "What?" And my mom's like, "You're putting my daughter up on the stand?" Well, that's the only way we can convict him. He never got convicted. He got 2 days. 2 days. only 2 days. And that was when he had come out of jail at 10 and said, you put daddy in jail. Well, yeah, sorry. You raped me from 4 months to 8 years old. You beat us mercilessly. You would tell us about how you were going to feed us to the pigs because pigs eat everything and there would be no evidence. Like, you did all these terrible things and yet you're crying because you got 2 days. I have a
Right.
lifetime of scars because of this.
Mm.
Or I guess now I kind of look at it as like, I now have a lifetime of stepping stones.
Hmm. I don't want to interrupt your story here, but I do have a question.
Mhm.
I as you're talking, I'm thinking about, as I know our listeners are, and Kim, I know you are too. I'm thinking about so many of our students, and just students are passing through my head thinking about some of the similarities that you're talking about. So I want to know what were you like at school?
I was very shy and quiet. That also came from the strict religion that we were in, and that, that's how we were supposed to be. But of course, from home too. But I was an overachiever. Like, I didn't talk to you, but I would do anything and everything to get good grades.
Hmm.
I was the one that don't look at me, don't talk to me, don't play with me, but I'm going to turn my homework in and just don't say that I did really well type of person.
Mm.
And I mean, that lasted my whole educational career, including college, to be honest.
Mm.
It was, okay, yes, I'll be smart, but don't tell anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Don't show them my grade. Don't read them my story out loud. Don't, nope. I just wanted to fall back into the wall. I didn't want to have any spotlight on me, and I know that that's different because other people do. Like, they're more of the, I'm going to be loud and I'm going to be a bully and I'm going to be a clown or I'm going to make people laugh. I was more like, just let me do my thing. Like, just leave me alone. Like,
You wanted to please your teachers, but you didn't want the attention that came.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Don't put me in front of the class. In fact, so I always wanted to be a writer. And so spelling bees were my thing. But because of the fact that I did not want to go up in person to have to do it if I were to win, I would make myself fail on the spelling bees because I did not dare go up in front of people. The same thing with, I think it was a high school test that we had, and they told you, like, if you pass and you could get scholarships, you could do this, you could do that, and you could be awarded these things. I made myself fail so that I would not have to do it because that was too much for someone to look at me or to see me like that. Mm-mm.
So we see kids who are in that survival brain, that fight or flight. So do you think that you were more of just kind of turned in on yourself and just like you're saying, don't see me? I was just reading something about that type child, and that's another sign is you kind of fold up to where you don't want that attention. And is that what was happening with you as a child?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was easier for me to hate myself than actually go and do something in public and then everybody laugh at me or everybody see my pain or everybody know my story. I mean, I felt like it was all written across my head,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and especially when you finally trust somebody enough when you get a little bit older and you start telling them and they stop being your friend or they start spreading rumors or they just up and leave you because they don't know how to handle your stuff, but neither do you.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, it must be me. I'm the problem. So yeah, it's definitely a turning inward, a silent anger, hatred for yourself, all
Mm.
of it.
I think that's so good for us to hear
Mm-hmm.
because I think as school counselors, we kind of look for that kid that is the typical trauma that I guess affects us as educators more, which is the kid that will demand the attention. I will tear this room apart.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back on what you said through my career as a school counselor here and elsewhere, sometimes those that we would find out there was sexual abuse would be exactly the type person that you're describing yourself as being. And I think it's easy for us to not look beneath because they're not causing any waves. They're just, they're not marking any checks that's making my day harder. And so I think that's very interesting.
I mean, and honestly, they don't want to be looked at. They don't want to be talked to. They don't want to be, because they're scared.
Mm-hmm.
They're afraid that, like I said, where I thought that it was written on my forehead, it's the same thing. If they say something wrong, they're thinking someone's going to know. Or they make one little slight comment, oh, that's going to get me in trouble. They're going to call my parent. My parent's going to do this. Like, you are constantly on your toes thinking about every little step you're taking because you have to, because that's all you know. And so if someone were to confront you and be like, hey, is everything okay at home? You're going to say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's fine. Oh, okay, I just noticed you were a little quiet. Nope, I'm fine. I'm just tired. Or the kid that falls asleep in class. Same thing. Like, I would fall asleep sometimes because we would be woken up in the middle of the night to have to carry in firewood because we didn't fill it enough. But you cannot wear your winter boots, and you can't wear your winter gloves, and you can't wear your coat, but you're going to go outside in the winter in Minnesota and you're going to carry this firewood in because you did not fill the firewood thing. And it's your fault, whether you have school tomorrow or not. This is real. And so people just think that kids are like lackadaisical, or they, are troublemakers. And it's not. You don't know how to express what's going on. You don't know that person you can trust because everyone else around you, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. Like I said, even with the example of my cousin, they knew they were adults, and looking at the grand scheme of things, you always think, oh, adults are supposed to help kids. In my life, no, it was not the adults helping the kids. It was the kids helping the kids. That's who it was. And that's who it's continued to be, to this day. Like, yes, all my siblings and I are adults now, but if I hadn't had them, I don't know who I'd have or what I'd have, to be honest. Like, the thought of the suicidal ideation is insane. The constant reliving, the PTSD, the feelings, the smells, the thoughts, someone says one wrong thing, but you don't even know what is the wrong thing. Like, you have no idea. But you're going to react, and you're going to fight, or you're going to run, or you're going to cry, or you're going to scream because all of these things are happening. And then again, now you're the crazy one. So you better pull it in. You better not show emotion. You better not show hurt and pain and anger and love. You better not show anything, because it is easier to not show anything because you don't get hurt that way.
Laura, you're just going to have to take turns with me because I've got a bunch, and I know you do too. Go ahead. You want to pick her brain, I know.
Yeah, I do. So I have kind of a two-part question. We talk a lot on our podcast about how school counseling has changed. And when we were growing up, we didn't have the same type of school counselors that we are now. So, and in our correspondence back and forth, you said, I wish I'd had a school counselor that could have helped me. So I want to ask you, as that student, if you had had a school counselor, what would you have wanted that school counselor to do for you? And then I have a part B. So you can answer that. And Kim, don't butt in because I've got the second part.
Oh, that's tricky. I think you just tricked me to get two in.
I think about this now, and the school counselors that I had, they did the best they could, and I give them kudos for that. But sometimes you have to be the school counselor that knows that person is quiet for a reason. You have to be that school counselor that if this person tells you anything, which, yes, there's supposed to be the code of ethics, but let's be honest, there are people that break that. And I found that out as a teenager, that a school counselor broke that code of ethics and told somebody else's parent something about me because they were friends with the parent.
Oh.
You don't do that, because now you're another adult I cannot trust. You're
Mm,
now another person I can't go to because what else have you been telling about me?
yeah.
What else are you thinking about me? And I think that's the hard part is like, it's not necessarily having questions for those kids. It's sometimes just sitting there and being there. Just be there with them. Let them, whether you're drawing, coloring, talking, they're doing something, whatever, just be there. Don't interrupt. Don't change it. Don't overanalyze every little thing they're drawing. Like, just be there,
Mm,
and be truthful, be genuine, be the person you needed when you were a kid, because none of us had that.
that's good. So, the part B to that question is now, with your experience in the helping field, what sort of support would you give to your younger self?
The help I would give to myself, again, like it's the being there. It's the when you have those little quiet moments between you and that child that maybe the rest of the world is kind of chaotic, but that one's hanging back a little bit. Maybe that's when you sneak in the question of, "Hey, how are you?"
Mm,
Or "Hey, I've noticed that you're kind of sad today. Something happened?" Or even that you have to be careful, because you can't do the leading questions and then your
right.
mind goes crazy of what can happen, or is happening at home. And to be honest, I've seen this a lot more. Like I give myself a lot more grace by being the arms worker that I am now because of dealing with the adults that I deal with, because they all have that inner child too.
Yeah.
And so I sit with that inner child. I try to talk with that inner child. I try to teach that inner child things that maybe their parents couldn't teach them
Mm,
or
yeah.
didn't teach them. Let's name the emotion. Let's talk about why that feels yucky. Where does it feel yucky in our body? Like, and I use yucky because you have that inner child that you're dealing with, and that's what it is. It's yucky. It's seeing them for who they are and who they can be. Stop trying to pigeonhole people and put them in some little box of, well, you make this amount of money or you do this or you do that. So, this must mean this is who you are. You have no idea who we are. None. And I think that that's where people get it wrong is, like you have that normal stigma, that normal, quote unquote, look of, well, that must be a person that's going through that. You could be completely wrong. And
Right.
sometimes you are.
So I have some questions about like the ACEs. It sounds like I don't know what your score is. I don't even know if you want to share it. We know the 10 questions that are on there, and it sounds like you pretty much are hitting all of those.
Yes, ma'am.
Um,
Yes.
so uh, the physical abuse that your other siblings probably endured, correct? Were you all physically abused?
As far as I understand, yes, but we don't really talk about that a lot. We talk more about how my sister and I seem to have a different dad than my younger siblings did,
Mhm,
because
mhm.
after we left, things changed and whatever, but they still would go and see him and give him a chance. And so I can't speak for them.
I hear you. Yeah. And
Yes.
I have heard that older sometimes have been more abused than the younger. And I don't know, I'm not saying that with you, but just in experiencing with in life. But it sounds like the sex abuse is and it makes sense, is the most lasting, I guess, the harder to recover from, or does the whole thing wrap up into one?
I think it depends. I think so. I'm going to say this with as much love as possible. I think if I was a male, I would look at it differently,
Mhm,
because the male brain is, it's different than ours, where the male brain, they have these little nice little neat boxes they can
mhm,
put stuff into. We have this big ball of craziness.
mhm.
So, yes, the sexual assault is definitely something that's everlasting and something that continues to be a problem when it comes to relationships to this day. But honestly, it's the whole validation of just not being good enough. It's the whole ball of wax of like, your dad used you and did these things, but yet he beat you because you weren't good enough to do this, or he didn't talk to you for a month because you had to repeat kindergarten because you couldn't see, like,
Yeah.
or he embarrassed you at your high school graduation because you wouldn't let him sit on stage with your class because you didn't look at him as a parent. He wasn't there to raise you, so why should he be there?
Mhm.
All these things, and it's more that, like, and I can't say for everybody, of course. For myself, I've had to work very, very long and hard to be okay with physical touch,
Mhm.
almost of any sort.
Mhm.
Um, Other people, research shows it can go completely the opposite way, where they want to be touched and they want to be hugged and held and all that stuff. I'm not that person. And
Yeah.
so that makes it really hard. Or when it comes to being an adult and intimacy comes up in relationships, I don't necessarily freeze, but it's like I still have that mentality that the other person has to start it. The other person has to show the interest. And if they don't, I find myself backing off because I'm like, well, I know what it feels like to not be respected, so I'm not going to do that to you. And it could be the slightest little thing. It could be maybe they just said, "Hey, give me a minute, I'm busy." Now I'm rejected. I'm
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm rejected. I'm not trying anymore. It is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, well, you never showed me any affection that way because I don't know how, because I can't.
Yeah.
I want to, but I can't.
And I think I have a part B. I have a part B to that on the so I am always surprised at the stories that I learned that with my own students and how many were sexually abused, and some I knew about as we went through that journey, and some I did not know, I missed. And then kids coming into the school, and I might not know them very well, and that's part of their story. So I think it happens more than anybody can imagine under the school roof. This is happening when they go home, and that's very disturbing.
Yes.
But I think it's when you were talking of just your struggle of being listened to and really trying to understand within yourself as a child, is this happening? Is it really happening? That just resonated because I have seen that with students that have struggled with this. And it's the shame, it's the not being listened to. Um, and some of the students, I mean, definitely they hit all the markers of their behavior. Pretty much they're telling you I've been sexually abused. We can see all the signs, all the things that they're doing, and you know,
But
it's
they'll tell you
really
everything's
difficult
fine.
to prosecute that or to make a child go through that or for whatever. But I just I just think that is something that is hard for us to grasp as school counselors and educators, how much of this is going on when these students go home and what they're living through.
For
So,
sure. For
yeah.
sure.
So, Laura, it's back to you. See, I did a part A and B too.
I am amazed at your family and how out of your siblings, nobody, like, you all sound so stable, and that is not what we usually see
Mm-mm.
with a family that has a high ACE score. So we talk a lot about trauma and how one caring adult can turn that around. And so I'm just curious, what was it for you all? Like, what broke that cycle for you all?
Well, I want to say that I think there's different parts, because I think part of it is my mom did get us out. Even though she had lived her whole life through it as well, she said she did not want her kids to grow up that way. And yes, damage was done, but she did get us out. And she kept us away from that side of the family as much as she possibly could, so that we could have the life that she felt we deserved. But to be honest, the other side is the fact that our mom was very, very sick our whole life. And I feel like that's kind of, I don't want to say the glue because that sounds terrible, But yet in some ways I think it is, the glue that we were all so close. Like, yes, there was that terrible abuse, there was that terrible trauma, but we had to be there for each other because we didn't know if our mom would be alive when we got home from school.
Mm.
And so she was a great person, loving person, but we had to grow up kind of fast, even once we left him, because of the fact that she got so sick and we were in and out of foster homes. And that was, don't even talk about the foster system. But there's, all of those things too that I think I can't say we haven't had our struggles. We're not unscathed,
Mm-hmm.
but we also know what we don't want to be.
Yeah.
Like I think my brother puts it best because he's never drank alcohol, like hardly ever. He doesn't drink at all. And he said, I grew up seeing so much of what I didn't want to be that if that's the reason, I'm not touching it.
Wow.
And so he hasn't, and I love him for it. I feel like it's more than one thing. And I think, again, not to turn this into a religious thing, but it's by the grace of God. Honestly, it truly, truly is. Like, my mom was very religious till the day she died, very spiritual, taught us about God, taught us that you pray to him about everything, you bring everything to him. There were many times that we thought we would lose her, and we know it's because of God that we didn't at that time. There were many times that I remember turning 13. I stayed up until 10:49 p.m. on my 13th birthday. And I remember hitting the chair and I said, Mom, I didn't think I'd be here. And she said, I wasn't sure if we would either. But again, it comes back to that whole, just love one another, be there for one another. Even if you disagree, just listen. Don't say anything sometimes, just listen.
It sounds like your bond was made even stronger through the adversity. And so I guess that could have easily gone either way. I know that it could break a family apart. And we know what ACEs does to adults, their health, and how they cope, and the bad choices that sometimes are made. At some point, you had to decide, and I always think this about people who come out of that. Your mother lived in it, then you lived in it. There has to be a point where either there has to be a decision that has to be made. I'm going to break out of this, and you do that hard work, and it is hard work.
Yeah.
But I don't know that the work ever stops. I think when you talk about that inner child, having a father, as Laura and I've told the story before, having a father who had an ACEs score of 8 or 9, he that inner child, even though he broke the cycle, that inner child always hurts for the childhood that was lost. And is that a accurate statement?
Oh, absolutely. Like I would look at my mom and like you would see that. Like she would talk about how, well, she didn't learn that, or she didn't know that, or she couldn't experience that, or, and then unfortunately the same cycle kind of happened with us, not necessarily because she wanted it to, but, it's like, but she had told herself, because all her siblings, so she had 2 sisters and 2 brothers, and the siblings that had children lost them. And she told herself, I'm damned if I'm going to lose my kids. And she didn't. She never did. I mean, yes, we were in and out of foster homes at times because she was sick and all these things, but we always got to go home. I remember one time before she passed, she had told me, you are exactly the person that I wish I had been at your age. Because I don't know what it's like to be that strong-willed and that courageous. And so I wish that I could have done that.
Does that help you with maybe any bitterness that you might ever begin to feel about your mom not taking the role of your protector at an earlier age? I don't understand that part. And so I know that you loved her. And so did that part help you understand why she stayed as long as she stayed?
I think there's always been this part of me that understood to a point. The hardest part for me to probably stomach was her reason for leaving was not the reason that I initially thought it was. she had said, I wanted my kids to have a better life, all of this stuff, which is true.
Mhm.
But she had also made the comment before that she couldn't watch him kill himself anymore. And I thought, but what about us? He's killing us.
Right.
Yeah.
He's wrecking us. He's tearing apart our souls. And you left because he was drinking himself to death. But now, like, as I get older, and like I said, even as I was a very precocious child, so I did a lot of reading. Like, I read the dictionary for fun. I know, nerd alert, can't help it. But, that overachiever. And so I think there was an understanding that I knew that my mom had her own mental issues. She had her own struggles. She had her own demons that she did or did not get to conquer when her day came. So I think that kind of always gave me a little bit of grace when it came to her,
Okay.
to a point, because I knew that. Now, had I been someone else and not known the things that I knew, it might be different. My mom grew up going in and out of foster homes herself, and going in and out of mental hospitals, and all of this stuff. She got married when she was 17. She was 17, my dad was 34. Tell me how that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that was normal. You know what I mean? Like, that was okay, supposedly. So I think it just comes down to that, like, there's not going to be hate in my heart for my mom. There's things I didn't understand about my mom. There's things I may never understand about my mom. But she's still my mom.
Yeah.
Just the other coin for my dad, too. The best thing that I've ever done was actually this year on his birthday, I did a letting go ceremony where I had wrote a letter of everything I wanted to say, and I ripped it up and read it to his tombstone. My life has changed immensely, and that was just in May. And I think one of you reached out to me like a week later, so that's a God thing, just saying. Like,
It's a powerful story, and it's a reminder when we're talking to an adult that yes, these kids are here. It's not hopeless, and to hear, obviously extremely intelligent, and for you to share your story, it helps educators. It helps us to remember we can get so busy, and we can be putting out the big fires when there's these horrendous things happening right under our nose. So it just is a reminder of that. And Laura, I think one of the reasons that I asked that is I have students who come in and I know the situations are bad. And now, but no matter what decisions those adults are making, and it usually is the mother that those kids will cling to. I think you've helped us understand that a little bit better. But it sounds like that letting go ceremony was big, and letting that go in the grace you gave your mother, because we know that bitterness and hatred is a killer, it's a stressor, and it's not healthy. So I'm glad that you've turned this around and you're helping other people. And you're doing it today on your birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I hate that you're having to tell this story on your birthday, but it is, yes, to make 43. And when you said that, I thought how profound, because I don't think people understand what a miracle it is for people who have lived in that much trauma to reach those adult ages. So that's just part of the sad truth of that. So,
and just to piggyback about the mom thing, like, and this is the thing, is I think that a lot of, I'm liking seeing now that a lot of people are saying what happened to you instead of what's wrong with you. But I think had people given my mom more grace on that question and actually listened, I don't know that she would have left earlier, but I can't say she wouldn't have, because we don't know.
She may never have had the support and help. And I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't thinking about that until you brought that up. And we may be that person. We call them rope holders. We may be that rope holder. And sometimes it is the adults we're working with, the parents of these children, that we may need to reach out and say, what is it that we're going to be able to do for you to help you in this situation? That's profound, Holly. That is really profound. Yeah.
I mean, and also, like, any kid that you see that that's in that situation, the thing is like, so yes, you don't know what the mom's going through, but most likely, research show that there are certain dynamics when it comes to perpetrators And there's the isolation, there's the putting down, there's the taking away, there's the, all of that stuff. And so you have a mom who is taking their kid to school hoping that this kid is going to do better than they did. But at home, this mom is getting told, you have nothing without me.
Mm.
I think that people forget that. And it's, well, why didn't she leave?
Yeah.
Why, if she, and honestly, I didn't tell my mom what was going on until I was 10. My mom had no idea that my dad had raped me until I was 10. And I wasn't even going to tell her. I didn't tell her. My friend told her because I said, please don't tell my mom. She has way too much on her plate already with the other younger kids and she's sick. Please don't tell her. I just needed to tell somebody. And so that too, like if you're a kid like I was, which I know there's other kids, I can't be the only kid that thinks this deeply and this loves this much and wants the best for their family. You're going to keep it to yourself because you don't want to hurt that parent.
And the uncertainty of what comes next is scarier than what you're living through sometimes when you're looking at it through a 10-year-old lens.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I already knew that if we were going to eat that night, it was going to probably be food out of the garbage. His thing was, if you don't eat all that's on your plate, you're going to sit there until you do. You're feeding me from a trash can.
Yeah.
Of moldy, old food. But you're telling me to eat it because you took the money that could get us some good food to buy alcohol and drugs.
Right.
I am so glad that you're out of that cycle and that you're doing the good stuff and even here with us today.
The fact that you guys reached out to me, first I thought it was a joke. Like I thought someone was messing with me, I'm not going to lie. And to see that it's not is amazing because people need to have these conversations. They need to hear these stories. They need to walk alongside people that have lived through these things in order to know how to be a better human, period. There's a reason why I'm here, and there's a reason why people like me exist, and there's a reason why people like me continue to fight this fight.
Holly, I would love to link, when I say I, of course mean Laura, link that PBS special. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest things that I did for myself, I've been in ACA for 3 years, Adult Children of Alcoholics. One of the best, most amazing things I could put myself through. Or CODA, which is for the codependent side, because you have that side too. Like all these things that you think don't exist, it's just because you can't find them, but somebody has it. You know
Perfect.
What I mean?
Yeah. Yes. Perfect. Those are great resources.
Yeah.
And those are resources as school counselors that we can share out to our parents and to our students and to different people. So that is wonderful and amazing. And you are a font of knowledge. I hate that you lived it, but you're using it. And Laura and I always say, we don't want to go through anything that we don't use, that's hard, and use it to help others. So we appreciate your faith and your strength.
I just got chills thinking about what a selfless thing to do on your birthday and how intentional you were to choose this date. You're choosing on your birthday to share your story. And I know it's painful to relive the trauma, but you're changing lives. I know some counselors are hearing this and they've probably endured this, similar things too. But not only that, they're going to be able to help their students that we know are going through these things. So I just thank you for being so selfless.
Oh, you're welcome. God gives us all a purpose. And was it crummy the way it started? Sure. But do I have to continue to live that way? No. I get to choose what I do with my story. And so I choose to share it.
Well, I mean, after I didn't want to let go Holly go. I wanted to know more. I just felt like she was just such this strength, this tower of strength, and I felt
And
that.
she's so gracious to allow us to ask these questions. And I think that was the thing, one of the things that I took away from her, that, she's gone through this horrible experience, but she's allowing us to learn from it and ask the tough questions. I was just struck by that.
Yeah. When she started off on This Is My Birthday, I'm 43 years old, and thinking about those high ACEs scores. And so I thought, well, that really struck me as profound. And there was so many nuggets in what she said. I really could have dug into each one of those, but so many of them were just me personally wanting to know more. But I was trying, and you did a really good job of keeping it for all educators and how this can help. But I really felt like this was a great conversation to piggyback on what we did about our ACEs training that we did for our teachers in our schools, and to keep this in the forefront at all times of educators' minds.
Yeah, I agree, because this gives that why. This is the face behind why we talk about those things. This is a person who's lived the things that we are trying to train our teachers about. Like, it just intensifies that urge in me to go out and find these kids when I hear stories like this.
Yeah. Or to be very cognizant of those signs. She was a different kid, though.
Yeah, she was.
That part, I just was sitting here thinking you had going home to eating slop,
Yeah.
in poverty, in and out of foster homes, and you were that intelligent. We just don't know. She fought really hard to keep it quiet, and our students do. They do fight to keep it quiet. But anyway, I am so glad that we reached out to her. I think that was really neat.
You saying they fight to keep it quiet, that statement intrigues me a little bit, because you're right, they do. And then sometimes on the other side, they don't know any different. They don't know that anything's unusual.
That's true too. Yeah. Yep. When we've had those conversations.
Her story reminds me in a way of Kevin Honeycutt, of that conversation with him. And I think I'm going to link it in the show notes, just because
I was thinking of him also, just that hiding in the night and taking off.
And of course, there are differences, but sometimes when I listen to a podcast, it makes me want to find more that are like, I want to glean as much as I can. So I'm going to link that, just because if you liked this one, you may like that one.
It's another Everybody's Got a Story. It's a great one.
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
I do want to say, during that episode, we're both still at school. It's after school, but we're both still at school. And our lights are on a sensor where if you don't move for a certain time, and we were both captivated by her story, so we weren't moving around, but our lights both went out. And whenever your lights went out, it is like your color on your face popped, and my color improved when my lights went out.
It's like I'd been attacked by the Avon lady, and I'm like, bam!
Yeah, it is a little like that. I think that I'm going to turn my lights out and just operate in the dark from now on, based on how good I feel like I looked in the dark.
Henceforth, I would say that you do look better in the dark. I would say
no one can see.
I would turn all the lights off and just sit in the dark. Let's see how that goes for you. So we have been signing books, and we have been mailing off books, and we are having the best time. Getting a lot of people say, it's just so funny. And I'm like, but it's good too. Aren't you getting? I'm wanting the intelligence to come out. They're like, it's so funny.
And speaking of our book, you can find it on Amazon, and I think a couple of other retailers have it out there. You can also purchase it from our website. Thank you to everyone that has purchased a copy, and thank you for the reviews that people have left. My daughter was sitting on the couch with me, and I pulled it up yesterday to check a few things, and she said, "Wow, Mom, you have 5 stars." It impressed her, a 9-year-old. So
and you called your mother immediately and said, "Thank you, Mom.
Thank you for the 5-star review, Mom.
I enjoyed it."
I enjoyed it too. And you can like us on Instagram. You can follow us on Facebook. You can rate and review this podcast, because stories like the one that you heard today need to be heard. And so whenever you rate and review our podcast, it helps other educators and school counselors find our podcast. So please rate and review.